I'm becoming deeply worried by what is happening. Indeed, what is happening in Caracas is perhaps the worst form of colonialism. The demands of the US are simply outrageous. One of the demands is that the major national resource of Venezuela, which is oil, should be put under the direct control of the US president. I mean, where does this happen? That one country's national resources should be put under the direct control of another country's president. It's unbelievable, but this is the demand. Number two, the US is demanding that Venezuela should cut off all economic relations with Russia, China, and Iran. I mean, it's preposterous in the extreme. And Cuba. So the US now is demanding that it should be in charge of the foreign policy of an independent sovereign state. Unbelievable. Completely unbelievable. You know, and there are other such outrageous demands. Now, be that as it may, there's also been a lot of lies. A lot of lies have been spread about what is happening in Caracas. And one of those is the lie that his own bodyguards betrayed him and that they were bribed by the intelligence services of the United States of America to betray him. Now, the purpose of that lie is to falsely create the impression that Maduro had no support. Because even if his own bodyguard could betray him, then he had no support, then he's very weak and so on, and therefore justifies the US action. The facts are different. One, there was heavy resistance from his bodyguards, leading to a situation in which 80 of his bodyguards were killed by the invading forces. 80 of them. These 80 bodyguards of Maduro who were killed by the invading forces included 32 Cuban internationalists were killed. So it cannot be true. Many interesting aspects of this whole, standoff and so on. And one is the very interesting statement which was made by President Donald Trump. When asked if the Venezuelan opposition would take over the leadership of the country, he said two things. One, that the Venezuelan opposition has no respect in Venezuela. The people of Venezuela do not respect the opposition leaders, especially Machado, who was only recently given a Nobel Prize. This is Donald Trump. Says they have no respect. The Venezuelans don't respect them. Then he made a second point, that they don't have the competencies to run Venezuela. Now, this is the US who has always argued that Maduro lost the elections to the opposition. Now, if the people of Venezuela, according to him, do not respect the opposition, how do they vote for the opposition to beat Maduro in the election? And if he's convinced that they don't have the competencies to run Venezuela, what is this hue and cry over the opposition having lost an election and therefore it's legitimate for the opposition to take over power? To run Venezuela again? It simply doesn't make any sense at all. For me, the other situation simply is that in spite of the kidnapping or abduction of Nicolas Maduro, his government remains intact. His government still controls majority of the seats in parliament. Vast majority of the seats in parliament is in the hands of the Maduro government. Indeed, the Supreme Court of Venezuela has just sworn in Maduro's vice as the interim president, and it is obvious that they are in control. Now, what is also interesting is that the street, now significantly, the interim president, who used to be vice president of Maduro, has said that as far as Venezuela is concerned, Maduro remains the president of Venezuela. and that they would not succumb to colonization from the US and so on. So there's now a few other things are worthy of mention, which is the solidarity that Venezuela is receiving from South American or Latin American countries. Indeed, almost all of them, with the exception of one, have declared full solidarity with Venezuela. And indeed, yesterday, 6 of them issued a joint statement calling for the immediate release of Maduro and describing what had happened as illegal. And so this is Latin America, this is South America, and so on. There's no evidence whatsoever linking Maduro to narco trading. No evidence. The US has not been able to provide a shred of evidence linking Maduro to narco trading and so on. So that collapses, completely. Now, the initial charges which were preferred against Maduro were laughable. One of the charges was simply that Maduro was in possession of a machine gun. Can you believe this? The president of Venezuela was in possession of a machine gun, not in the United States, but in his palace. Whatever it is, the US can only exercise the kind of control it wants over Venezuela if it can take over Venezuela. Donald Trump cannot run Venezuela sitting in Washington if he does not put troops on the ground in Venezuela. Now, I know Venezuela a bit, Even the geography of Venezuela is a challenge. The geography of Venezuela. Even Caracas. The geography of Caracas is a challenge. It's a mountainous, forested region. And to put troops on the ground to control Venezuela is an uphill task. The US Army is not capable of doing that. In fact, Venezuela is far more complicated than Libya, which was a desert area. It's far more complicated than Vietnam, and so on. So to put troops on the ground is a major challenge for the US. They can't do it and succeed. And if they cannot do that and succeed, they cannot take control of Venezuela. At the kicks, what the US is doing are the kicks of a dying empire. And if you go through history, it's there. That is how Spain, as the dominant power in the world, collapsed. That is how Britain, which at a certain stage in history controlled 25% of the land area of the world, collapsed. And certainly these are the signs that the US empire is about to collapse.